Just before the Iranian deal was struck, we talked with Middle East expert Jonathan Spire about how the nuclear deal with Iran would affect the region. He told us it would lead to a nuclear arms race.
Well, it'll be a much more dangerous and volatile region, a region that is already very volatile politically in terms of being split by powerful states opposing one another in areas in which governance has effectively collapsed. The Iranians versus the Saudis / Turks / Qataris, also in Syria, also in Iraq in a different way, also in Yemen in a different way. All those existing conflicts will be, of course, exacerbated by the parallel presence of a nuclear arms race and of proliferation of nuclear arms in the region. It'll exponentially increase the dangers in an already very dangerous neighborhood.
And also about the sanctions relief that seems tied to the negotiations. It could release billions of dollars back to Iran. What impact would that have on the region?
It will be huge. If this happens, it will be huge. The figure which many analysts talk about is $150 billion sitting there, mainly in frozen oil revenue. If that comes back online in the coming months, this will be an enormous shot in the arm for the Iranians, who are in danger of looking a little bit overstretched in recent months. They've got commitments in Syria, they've got the commitment in Iraq we were discussing earlier, they're committed to supporting the Houthis in Yemen, they're committed of course also to Hezbollah in Lebanon, they're supporting also Islamic Jihad and maybe also Hamas among the Palestinians. It's a big portfolio of support. It requires a lot of money for a state under heavy sanctions to cope with. If the sanctions are lifted and tens or hundreds of billions of dollars suddenly become available again, of course the Iranians will be in a happy position from their point of view to exponentially increase the support to their various beleaguered friends and allies and clients across the region.
Then if a negotiation could lead to a nuclear arms race and then pour billions of dollars into these conflicts around the Middle East, what possible explanation is there for a deal with Iran then?
As far as I understand the thinking of the US administration in this regard, and their European allies of course as well, it is that they believe that Iran is willing or is in a position to be flipped, so to speak, from an anti-Western force into a neutral or pro-Western force in the region. There are even some, and I read an article in the British Daily Telegraph newspaper this week by former British Ambassador Christopher Mayer, former Ambassador to the United States, who argues that Iran, once it's flipped, once it's got its deal, could actually become a factor of order, could become a Western ally in the region. So there is this very strongly held belief that Iran is just waiting to be given sufficient inducements to become a reasonable player in the region. And that's underlying all this stuff that's going on. My own estimation as somebody who watches this region pretty closely is that there is no content to that belief whatsoever. The Iranians are very serious about their anti-American stance, which goes back, of course, 30 years, very serious about their desire to destroy Israel, about their opposition to Sunnis and other presence in the region, and their sectarian interest and their strong Shia Islamist ideology, absolutely serious about that. And if they're given inducements, they'll happily take the inducements and feed those into the continued promotion of the already existing strategy that they have, which is to replace the United States as the hegemonic presence in the Gulf and also further across the region.
If you were talking to somebody in the United States or somebody in the West, Great Britain or Europe, what would you say, what do they need to understand about what's happening in the Middle East right now?
I think what they need to understand is two things. First and most importantly, that the Iranians are not available to be turned into allies. And secondly, of course, that Sunni jihadi Islamism represents not existential, but a very profound danger to the security of Western countries themselves and Western populations. Given that, what they need to be doing is identifying what allies do they have in these collapsed state areas of Iraq and Syria and elsewhere. And once they identify those allies, beginning to work with them to create a new coherent security architecture in the region, because there's plenty of people who want to be friends with the West in the region. Israel, of course, the Kurdish regional government in northern Iraq, the Gulf monarchies, the Jordanians, the Egyptians under Sisi. It's a pretty strong team. But right now it's a team that feels that the West just hasn't got behind it and the West is flailing about with all other kinds of ideas. What needs to happen is the danger needs to be addressed, and then the allies need to be coordinated and developed.